Welcome to Class 8 of English 101. This week we'll be giving our attention to prepositions, prepositional phrases, and how they are used in a sentence. Prepositions are words that convey relationships of location, time, or space. A preposition shows how a noun or a pronoun is related to some other word in the sentence. I have here a list of frequently used prepositions, and you can read through this list. I won't take time to read through this list, but these are commonly used prepositions that we use pretty much in all of our sentences to add flavor to our sentences, to give explanation to other words in sentences. Now on this screen, I've highlighted prepositions that are used in various ways. For instance, all the words, the prepositions that are in white, tell us location and answer the question where. Aboard the boat, among the tribes, around the campfire, near the exit, throughout the park. All of these tell us location and answer the question where. The prepositions I have highlighted in red tell time and answer the question when. After the ball game, before church on Sunday, during halftime, since we last met, until we reach the end. All of these tell time and answer the question when. And then the words that I have highlighted in blue are not related to either time or location, and they are used in different ways through different sentences, and those are but, except, for, like, and of. And we'll talk about these later on as we go through this week's class. But again, this is just a sampling of prepositions and how some of those prepositions are used in sentences. There are also compound prepositions. And again, I have a sampling of those here. According to, by the way, by way of, instead of, with regard to. These are compound prepositions used oftentimes in sentences. Now let's give consideration to the sentence. His car was found abandoned on the deserted highway. In this sentence, the phrase on the deserted highway is a prepositional phrase. The prepositional phrase is made up of several different parts. The word on in this sentence is the preposition. The word highway is the object of the preposition, and the entire prepositional phrase consists of the preposition, its object, and any modifiers of the noun. So in this sentence, the prepositional phrase is on the deserted highway. On again is the preposition. Highway is the object of the preposition, and the two words the and deserted are modifiers of the object. The highway, the deserted highway. So all of those words on the deserted highway make up the entire prepositional phrase in this particular sentence. Now, it would be a good thing at this point in time to talk about phrases and clauses. And of course, we'll go into much greater detail with phrases and clauses in future studies and in future class sessions. But just by way of introduction, since we are talking about prepositional phrases, we need to understand the difference between a phrase and a clause. Let's give attention first of all to the section on the left in blue, phrases. A phrase is a group of words that does not contain a subject and a verb. Please underscore that in your mind. A phrase is a group of words that does not contain a subject and a verb. A phrase acts as a part of speech rather than as a complete sentence. A phrase takes on the function of a noun, adjective, or an adverb. Consider the sentence, "The horse stood quietly inside the huge corral." We see here the prepositional phrase, inside the huge corral. And again, we see the structure of the prepositional phrase. It contains the preposition, the object of the preposition, and any modifiers of the object of the preposition. But in this prepositional phrase, there is no subject and no verb. It cannot stand alone as a sentence. Inside the huge corral does not make sense left to itself. Now let's compare that with the section on clauses. A clause is a group of words that contains both a subject and a verb, and it's used as a part of a sentence. And there are two different types of clauses that we need to understand. There's the independent clause, and then there's the dependent clause. An independent clause expresses a complete thought and can stand alone as a sentence. A dependent clause, on the other hand, does not express a complete thought and cannot stand alone as a sentence. Now, let's give consideration to the sentence. Marty is the last contestant who will give a speech. Marty in this sentence is the subject, is the verb. Marty is the last contestant. Now that is an independent clause. It makes a complete thought and can stand alone as a sentence. Marty is the last contestant. Who will give a speech is a dependent clause. It has a subject and it has a verb. Who is the subject? Will give a speech. Will give is the verb, but it will not stand alone. Who will give a speech is not a complete sentence. Now, if we form that in the form of a question, then certainly it would be a sentence. Who will give a speech? That is perfectly good sentence. But as it is written in this sentence, Marty is the last contestant who will give a speech. That is a dependent clause. It has a subject and it has a verb, but it does not have a complete sense left to itself. So a dependent clause does not express a complete thought and cannot stand alone as a sentence, even though it does have a subject and a verb. So again, comparing a phrase with a clause. A phrase is a group of words that does not contain a subject and a verb. It cannot stand alone as a sentence. On the other hand, a clause, an independent clause, can stand alone as a sentence because it is a complete thought. A dependent clause, even though it has a subject and a verb, cannot stand alone as a complete sentence because it does not express a complete thought. Now again, phrases and clauses will be discussed at length later in your studies, but just wanted to introduce you to a phrase and a clause because we are now moving into a study of prepositional phrases. So now let's give our attention specifically to prepositional phrases. The most common kind of a phrase is the prepositional phrase. And again, it begins with a preposition and it ends with a noun object. And the phrase consists of the preposition, the object of the preposition, and any modifiers of the noun or object of the preposition. Now consider this prepositional phrase. In the small brick house. In is the preposition. And this particular preposition is showing location, telling where. In the small brick house. The object of the preposition is the noun house. And the words that come between the preposition and the object of the preposition are what we refer to as modifiers. The small brick. All three of those words are modifiers of the object of the preposition. In the house, in the small house, in the small brick house. The small brick are all modifiers giving explanation to the prepositional phrase, the object of the preposition. Now let's look at these three sentences. A prepositional phrase may have more than one object, and in these sentences we have two objects for each sentence. We received a package from Don and Mary. The preposition is from, and the object is Don and Mary. So we have a prepositional phrase here with more than one object of the preposition. The second sentence, he surprised her with candy and flowers. So again, the preposition with is followed by a compound object, candy and flowers. So a prepositional phrase may have more than one object, but everything that is giving sense to the preposition is included in the prepositional phrase. Prepositional phrases usually in a sentence will act as either an adjective or an adverb. Now, there is the occasion when a prepositional phrase acts as a noun. So let's look at the three sentences we have here. Because in these three sentences, we're going to see how a prepositional phrase acts as an adjective, an adverb, and a noun. Because he was in a rage, Walter drove his car through the intersection and into a taxi cab. My horse is a chestnut mare with a white star on its forehead. Before dinner is a good time to do homework. In the first sentence, we have three prepositional phrases. Now, the first preposition, in, followed by the object rage, because he was in a rage, we're going to disregard that one for just a moment, because that's actually an adverb phrase. But we want to, in this sentence, we want to look at the other two. I'm sorry, the first one is an adjective phrase. But when we look at the other two, Walter drove his car through the intersection and into a taxi cab. Well, those two are prepositional phrases, through the intersection, into a taxi cab. They're prepositional phrases that are modifying the verb drove. Drove through the intersection, drove into a taxi cab. So both of those prepositional phrases are serving as adverbs in this sentence. Now again, going back to the first one, because he was in a rage, we've got the linking verb was, so it's linking in a rage back to he. And then since it's modifying a pronoun or a noun, it's an adjective, a prepositional phrase serving as an adjective. But what we want to focus on in that first sentence is the second two of those prepositional phrases, through the intersection, into a taxi cab. Drove through the intersection, drove into a taxi cab. Both of those are prepositional phrases serving as adverbs. Now let's give our attention to the second sentence. My horse is a chestnut mare with a white star on its forehead. Again, we have two prepositional phrases with the white star on its forehead. With and on are both prepositions, and so the first prepositional phrase is with the white star, and the second prepositional phrase is on its forehead. Now, the first prepositional phrase, with the white star, is modifying mare. So it's an adjective prepositional phrase modifying the word mare. The second adjective phrase, on its forehead, is modifying the word star. So, with the white star modifies mare. on its forehead modifies star. Both of these are prepositional phrases serving as adjectives in this sentence because they are modifying nouns. Now the next sentence, before dinner is a good time to do homework, is where a prepositional phrase is used as a noun. In this particular sentence, before dinner is a good time to do homework, before dinner is a prepositional phrase, but it's acting as a noun in this sentence. Actually, it's the subject of the sentence. Before dinner is a good time. So we've got before dinner followed by the verb is. So it's talking about the subject. Before dinner is a good time to do homework. So we have examples here in these three sentences of prepositional phrases being used as adverbs, adjectives, and nouns. Now, we'll talk in a few minutes about how to distinguish them, but what we have to learn is to identify the word that the prepositional phrase is modifying. And that will help us to understand if it's being used as an adjective, an adverb, or a noun in the sentence. So, let's look at a few examples now of prepositional phrases being used as adjectives. The three desperate men faded into the dim shadows of the forest. A small white country church stood on the grassy slope of the narrow dirt road. Ellen is smarter than any other student in the class. The road through the village was rutted and overgrown. And finally, Hitler committed especially heartless crimes against the Jews. Now, in the first sentence, the three desperate men faded into the dim shadows of the forest. Now, again, there are other prepositional phrases in these sentences, but we're focusing only on those that are being used as adjectives. For instance, in this first sentence, the three desperate men faded into the dim shadows. Into the dim shadows is a prepositional phrase, into the shadows. And it's modifying the word faded, telling us where they faded into. And so that is a prepositional phrase being used as an adverb. So we're going to disregard that one for the moment, and any other of the prepositional phrases in the other sentences on the screen that are being used as adverbs. And we're only going to focus right now on prepositional phrases being used as adjectives. So, the three desperate men faded into the dim shadows of the forest. Of the forest is the prepositional phrase, of being the preposition, forest being the object of the preposition, the being a modifier. And this particular prepositional phrase is modifying the word shadows. Shadows of the forest. So this is a prepositional phrase being used as an adjective. In the second sentence, a small white country church stood on the grassy slope of the narrow dirt road. Again, the prepositional phrase is of the narrow dirt road. Preposition is of, road is the object of the preposition, and the, narrow, and dirt are modifiers of the word road. Of the narrow dirt road is an adjective phrase modifying the word slope. Ellen is smarter than any other student in the class. The prepositional phrase here is in the class, and it's modifying the word student, so it is an adjective prepositional phrase, in being the preposition, class being the object of the preposition. The road through the village was rutted and overgrown. Through the village is the prepositional phrase, through being the preposition and village being the object of the preposition, and it is modifying the noun road, the road through the village. And finally, Hitler committed especially heartless crimes against the Jews. Our prepositional phrase is against the Jews, against being the preposition, Jews being the object of the preposition, and it's modifying the noun crimes, so it is an adjective phrase. Now, many of the words in that list I gave at the beginning of this session can also be used as adverbs. And it's really easy to tell the difference. Prepositions always have objects. Adverbs never do. Now, please understand, we're not here talking about prepositional phrases being used as adverbs. We're talking about prepositions that are used as adverbs. That will become clear as we go through the next few slides. In all of these sentences, I have prepositions highlighted in blue. The captain met the chief of the natives and brought him aboard. The commander of the ship walked aboard the vessel. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. The linebacker finally made it through. The tiny lifeboat sank below the crashing waves. Has all the gear been stowed below? Now, in these 6 sentences, I'm using 3 different prepositions. The words aboard, through, and below. But in some of these sentences, the words are being used as prepositions to begin a prepositional phrase. And in other of these sentences, the words, the prepositions, are actually being used as adverbs. So, let's read through these sentences again and try to determine which it is, whether it's a preposition or an adverb. The captain met the chief of the natives and brought him aboard. In this sentence, the word aboard does not have an object, so it's not serving in this sentence as a preposition. Rather, it's serving as an adverb. The captain met the chief of the natives and brought him aboard. Aboard is an adverb modifying the verb brought. Brought aboard. The second sentence, the commander of the ship walked aboard the vessel. Now in this sentence, the preposition aboard has an object, the vessel. Vessel is the object of the preposition, so aboard in this sentence is a preposition in the prepositional phrase aboard the vessel. So in the first sentence, the word aboard is not used as a preposition, but rather as an adverb modifying the verb brought. In the second sentence, the word aboard is a prepositional preposition beginning the prepositional phrase aboard the vessel, a preposition and object of the preposition. The third sentence, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. The word through in this sentence is serving as preposition, with the object of the preposition being the word waters. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. So through in this sentence is a preposition. But now let's consider the next sentence. The linebacker finally made it through. In this sentence, we have no object of the preposition. The word through is not serving as a preposition in this sentence. It's being used as an adverb modifying made. Made it through. The word through is an adverb. The fifth sentence, the tiny lifeboat sank below the crashing waves. Again, in this sentence, we have the word below, and in this sentence, it's serving as preposition, beginning the prepositional phrase below the crashing waves. Waves being the object of the preposition, and crashing being a modifier of the word waves, telling us what kind of waves they are. So in this sentence, below is serving as a preposition. But next, in the last sentence, we have the word below again, and it's not serving as a preposition. It's serving rather as an adverb. Has all the gear been stowed below? Below is an adverb modifying the word stowed. Where is it supposed to be stowed? It's supposed to be stowed below. Has all the gear been stowed below? So again, remember, prepositions always have objects. When a preposition from the list of prepositions is being used in a sentence without an object, then it's an adverb modifying another word in the sentence. Now let's give our attention to prepositional phrases being used as adverbs. I have 5 sentences here for us to consider. We moved the risers from the stage yesterday. Jesus stood calmly before his accusers in Pilate's hall. Our cousins will arrive from Charlotte tomorrow. Abraham rose early and took Isaac to Mount Moriah. The potter quickly shaped a jar from clay. I have underlined now all the verbs in these sentences. We moved. Jesus stood. Our cousins will arrive. Abraham rose early and took. The potter quickly shaped. So all of those are verbs. Now we're going to look for the prepositional phrases that modify or give explanation to the verb. I have all the prepositional phrases highlighted now in yellow. And the first sentence says, we move the risers from the stage. From the stage is a prepositional phrase serving as an adverb in this sentence, modifying the verb moved. We moved from the stage. Jesus stood before his accusers. So before his accusers is a prepositional phrase modifying the verb stood. Our cousins will arrive from Charlotte tomorrow. From Charlotte is the prepositional phrase modifying the verb will arrive. Abraham rose early and took Isaac to Mount Moriah. To Mount Moriah is the prepositional phrase modifying, giving explanation to the verb took. And finally, the potter quickly shaped a jar of clay. From clay is the prepositional phrase, and it's modifying the verb shaped. How did he shape it? From what did he shape it? From clay. So these are prepositional phrases serving as adverbs in these sentences. So now we've seen how that prepositional phrases can be used either as adjectives or as adverbs, and occasionally as nouns in sentences. Let's give our attention now to some common errors that are oftentimes seen in the use of prepositional phrases. The first common error is between the words beside and besides. Beside means by the side of. Besides means in addition to. So look at the 2 examples I have here. The tired old hound lay peacefully beside the dirt road. And in the second sentence, there are so many other restaurants in town besides this one. So we need to be careful how we use the words beside and besides. Beside means by the side of, beside the dirt road. Besides is a word that means in addition to. And those two are oftentimes confused in our communication. Another common error is between the usage of the words between and among. We always want to use between when we're referring to 2 people or things. And we want to use among when we're referring to more than 2. The young boy walked between his father and his mother. So we're talking about the young boy walking between 2 other people, his father and his mother. those football players are among the best in the entire league. Here we're comparing those football players with every other football player in the entire league. So we would use the word among instead of between. The young boy walked between his father and mother. Those football players are among the best in the entire league. Some other common mistakes that we make with prepositions is the use of the words except and accept and in and into. First of all, except and accept. Except as a preposition means excluding, whereas accept is a verb meaning to receive or to agree to. Now look at the sentences I have here. All the committee members arrived late except Thomas. So everybody came with the exclusion of Thomas. Except is a preposition beginning the prepositional phrase except Thomas. Thomas is the object of the preposition except. The second sentence, did James accept the award? In this sentence, the word accept is a verb, meaning he accepted something. So it's showing action. In this sentence, it's answering a question or asking the question, did James accept the award? But again, it is a verb. So accept is a preposition meaning excluding. Accept is a verb meaning to receive or to agree to. Number 4, in and into. We use in for location within something, and we use into for motion from outside to inside. James sits in the 4th seat of the 5th row. The word in is showing location. In what? In the 4th seat. They took the young puppies into the house. Into here shows motion from outside to inside. We sometimes just simply say they took the young puppies in the house. But actually the proper and the correct way of using that preposition would be they took the young puppies into the house. And James does not sit into the 4th seat. He sits in the 4th seat. So in is used for location. Into is showing motion from outside to inside. Just a couple more examples of common errors with prepositions and prepositional phrases. The words of and have. Of is a preposition and should not be used for the helping verb have. Again, it's a very common mistake in our speech. He should have left earlier if he wanted to arrive on time. That's incorrect. That's an improper use of the preposition of. The correct way to say that is he should have left earlier if he wanted to arrive on time. So be very careful in the use of and have. And then finally, to and. Do not use the conjunction and after the words try and sure. We need to use a different word instead. Try and be more patient. That's incorrect. Try to be more patient. Again, these are very common errors in the use of prepositions, prepositional phrases. And there are others as well. But these 6 will certainly help us in our communication, whether it be in verbal communication or in written communication. So let's try our hand at this. I'm going to just read through these sentences, and as I read through them, you determine which word is correct. William went forward to accept or accept the award. Has anything come among or between you and your best friend? The excited football players ran in or into the stadium. Everyone is expected to be at the movie premiere accept or accept Mary. There should be a spirit of peace among or between John and Peter. We should have arrived much earlier if we expected to find a parking space. Who attended the banquet beside or besides Harriet? The little girl stood in or into the room belonging to her father. And finally, two deer were running beside or besides each other in the forest. Now, as I read through those sentences, you probably just by listening to them were able to determine the correct form in some of them. But in others, it may not have been quite as simple. You have to know the rules of the usage of these words in order to be correct in your usage of them. So here now, I've marked out in red the words that should not be used, and I've left the words that should be used. William went forward to accept the award. It's something he is accepting. Accept means something entirely different. It means the exception. Whereas here, William is actually accepting the award. Has anything come among or between you and your best friend? Well, we're comparing two things, remember. So it would be between you and your best friend. The excited football players ran into the stadium, motioned from outside to inside. They ran into the stadium. Everyone expected to be at the movie premiere except Mary. Mary is the exclusion, so except Mary. There should be a spirit of peace between John and Peter. Again, we're talking about two individuals, so it would not be among, it would be between. We should have arrived much earlier if we expected to find a parking place. We would not use the preposition of there. Who attended the banquet besides Harriet? I'm not talking about location of being beside Harriet. We're talking about besides, in addition to. The little girl stood in the room belonging to her father. Remember, into shows motion from outside to inside, whereas in is the preposition showing location. And finally, two deer were running beside each other in the forest. Beside is the preposition, and besides would be in addition to. So these are proper usages of those verbs, prepositions that are oftentimes confused and used improperly. Now, going on with common errors, we need to watch out for prepositional phrases placed between the subject and the verb, because sometimes it can cause an error in keeping subject-verb agreement. I'll give you a few examples of what I'm talking about here. The flowers in the garden are or is so colorful. The popsicles from the freezer was or were. Colorful flowers in clear cellophane was or were. The musician's group of apprentices is or are. The test results of the study in the office need or needs to be reviewed. Now, the reason this is sometimes confusing, for instance, in that first sentence, the flowers in the garden, well, the flowers is the subject in this sentence. In the garden is prepositional phrase, an adjective prepositional phrase modifying the flowers. Where are they? They're in the garden. But garden is singular. And sometimes, since the verb is after the object of the preposition, we make the verb agree in number with that. Whereas the verb always has to agree in number with the subject, not with the object of the preposition. So in all of these sentences, we have to be careful that we're making sure that the verb and the subject agree in number. The flowers in the garden are. If we take the prepositional phrase out of that sentence, The flowers are so colorful. We would not say the flowers is. If it was singular, the flower is, but since it's plural, the flowers are. The popsicles from the freezer were. Now again, we're not matching the number of the verb with the object of the preposition. Freezer is singular, but the subject of the sentence is popsicles. The popsicles were melting in the summer heat. Colorful flowers in the clear cellophane were. Flowers were. We're not matching the number again with the object of the preposition. Cellophane was, but colorful flowers in clear cellophane were. The musician's group of apprentices is. The subject here is group, singular. The test results of the study in the office need. Results need. And so we always have to be very, very careful that when we have a prepositional phrase placed between the subject and the verb in a sentence, that the number of the verb always matches the number of the subject. Always remember, subject and verb must agree in number. Our study on the subject of prepositions. I will encourage you to go ahead and read the material in your textbook pertaining to prepositions and the proper use of prepositions, and those page numbers will be marked in your reading assignment this week. And then I encourage you to, in a very timely fashion, do the written assignment as well. Next week we're going to be talking about conjunctions and interjections, and so if you want to go ahead and look a little bit ahead in your textbook on those two subjects, it would probably be helpful. But until next week, you have a great week, and I will see you then. God bless, and have a wonderful week.